Fair use. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 USC 107. Under certain circumstances without authorization.
O Yahweh, open up you my lips, and let my mouth show forth your praise. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputso o Yaveka, Wayanusa Misanecha Mikaniacha. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputso o Yaveka, Wayanusa Misanecha Mikaniacha. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Shalom, family, and welcome to Into All Truth. May the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. In the name of Yahusha, I pray. Loose the four angels of the great river Euphrates. Make way for the kings of the east, the dragon, and the resurrection of Nimrod. This is the final episode in this series on the river Euphrates. And a lot of stuff I'm going to refer to is going to be in my book, which I've been trying to publish for a while, finish. So if you want more details, check that out, or some of my other videos on geography. I may say that I'm going to do another video, but we shall see, Yah willing. So let's get into this teaching, and we're going to begin by, reviewing the things we learned in the last video, just a short review. We're going to lay out the geography of Eden and the four rivers, and then we're going to go into this prophecy. So let's get started. 2 Esdras 11:39 says, "Art not thou the fourth beast which I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that reigned before." So this is, I believe, obviously all of this tied to the great river Euphrates. But the great river Euphrates and this fourth beast are also tied to Gilgamesh. And that's what we're going to get into as we look at these four angels being loosed from the great river Euphrates and prophetic end times. I'm going to show you that Gilgamesh is obviously Nimrod, and that Nimrod is the eighth Antichrist who will come. I'm going to show you that Gilgamesh... It is the day of Yahweh, and the 144,000 have been numbered, and the call to come out of her, my people, has sounded in Babylon. Satan's star has been cast down to the earth, and Abaddon has been unleashed. The sixth horn sounds, and four Satan's angels chained in the Euphrates rise to judge the earth and its fire and brimstone. In the 9th chapter of Revelations, the judgment of global Babylon, beginning in Babylon proper, the northwest. Then the sixth angel blew the trumpet, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before Elohim, saying, to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared in an hour, at a day, at a month, and at a year, to slay a third part of men. Revelation 9. I have mentioned that this is the time of Yasharal returning to the land, and it is the time of the smiting of the seven streams of the rivers of Egypt. How is this tied to the great river Euphrates? We will learn that it may actually be part of those seven streams and the judgment of the four corners of the earth. We will have to examine the land of Abraham too, as the great river Euphrates is the border of his land, as written in Genesis 15. And it's no coincidence that judgment flows out of that river. When Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, he promised the return of his sons and daughters in the fourth generation after 400 years. As usual, we'll work Hebraically. What has happened before will happen again. Ecclesiastes. Yah says a thing once and it speaks twice. And we will use 2 or more witnesses, and we will decode by the numbers. In Genesis 6, we know the fallen angels came down on Mount Hermon and began to mix with the blood of women, and this was the reason for the flood. And Enoch is told in chapter 10, verse 12, when all their sons, the sons of the fallen angels, kill each other, and when they see the destruction of their loved ones, bind them, the fallen angels, for 70 generations under the hills of the earth until the day of their judgment and of their consummation, until the judgment, which is for all eternity, is accomplished. So there are many angels, as we said before, chained in the depths. But are these the angels of the great river Euphrates? We'll find out. I'll begin by setting the stage for the unveiling end times, for the revelation of the sons of Yah, the mystery of iniquity, the Antichrist, and the deliverance of Yasharel. Let's look at the significance of the river Euphrates to the punishment of Satan, Leviathan, and how these 4 angels set the stage for the final beast and Antichrist. And we'll examine prophecies related to the great river Euphrates. Who was thrown down and discarded and sacrificed to the Euphrates? What else is buried there? What people, prophecy, and person? And who will be sacrificed now? Enoch 51. And in those days shall the earth also give back that which has been entrusted to it, and Sheol also shall give back that which it has received, and hell shall give back that which it owes. These angels chained in the depths are linked to the time of the reaping, when hell will give back to the nations that which it owes. And I saw there the Enoch chapter 56. And I saw there the hosts of the angels of punishment going, and they held scourges and chains of iron and bronze. And I asked the angel of peace who went with me, saying, to whom are these who hold the scourges going? And he said unto me, to their elect and beloved ones, that they may cast them into the chasm of the abyss of the valley, and that valley shall be filled with their elect and beloved. And the days of their lives shall be at an end, and the days of their leading astray shall thenceforward be reckoned. These are the dry bones. Ecclesiastes 3:15. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And Yahuwah requireth that which is past. Jeremiah 46:10. This is the day of Yahuwah Sabaoth, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge him of his adversaries. And the sword shall devour, and it shall be satiate, and made drunk with their blood. For Adonai, Yahuwah Sabaoth, has a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. Speaking of the elect ones of Israel, Enoch 51 also says, the salvation of Israel, for in those days the elect one shall arise, and he shall choose the righteous and holy from among them. For the day has drawn nigh that they should be saved. Abram's Genesis 15 promise to the righteous and elect of Israel concerning the Euphrates, the nightmare end time covenant vision. Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And in that same day Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. We're going to do a Euphrates deep dive to reveal many mysteries that these four angels chained in Euphrates point to. How does this river relate to the judgment of Babylon and the earth and Yasharel's deliverance? Where are the four great rivers and Eden? What lies beneath the Euphrates in the land of Shem today? What does the prophet Jeremiah, a submerged girdle, the Bible, and a rock have to do with end times and the Euphrates? Where is the great river Euphrates? Why is it called the great river Euphrates if it only covers Mesopotamia? And who was the first king post-flood to set up all the kingdoms along the Euphrates who will return again? Let's deep dive. The day of the retribution of the angels cast down, Israel threshed into a highway of righteousness and a city and temple of his elect bride. I told you in early October, Satan and his angels were being cast down by Michael, and the 144 was rising. Now, I already mentioned to you that the angels went forwards with scourges and chains to discipline Israel and cast them into the valley of dry bones. Now, these same angels go forwards to met out retribution. Enoch chapter 56 again. And I saw the hosts of the angels of punishment going, and they held scourges and chains of iron and bronze. And I asked the angel of peace who went with me, saying, to whom are these who hold the scourges going? And he said unto me, and in those days the angels shall return and hurl themselves to the east upon the Persians and Medes, and they shall stir up the kings, so that the spirit of unrest shall come upon them, and they shall rouse them from their thrones, that they may break forth as lions from their lairs, as hungry wolves among their flocks. And they shall go up and tread under foot the land of his elect ones, and the land of his elect ones shall be before them a threshing floor and a highway, but the city of my righteous shall be an hindrance to their horses. And so, family, what I want you to see here is that this, remember, Israel was whipped with chains and thrown into the valley to become dry bones that would rise. Now, it says at this time that the angels, these are the four angels over the four nations, shall return and hurl themselves upon the east, upon the Persians and Medes. So that's around the Euphrates. And then they'll stir them up so that they'll be wolves among their own flocks. So they will judge their own flocks. They will judge the people of the four corners of the earth of their own flocks. And they will go and tread the land of Yasharel. But the land of his elect ones shall be before them a threshing floor and a highway. But the city of my righteous shall be a hindrance to their horses. Who are the righteous, family? The elect ones of Israel are the actual city and temple of Yah. And it is through this threshing that they will become a highway of righteousness and a city. Regarding this highway of righteousness, Isaiah 35:8, this pertains to the threshing of Israel in the 400 years and the dry bones that they become in the valley that will rise. Isaiah 21, and behold, here cometh a chariot of men with a couple of horsemen. And he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the graven images of her gods he hath broken unto the ground. O my threshing, the corn, that is the seed that is harvested, of my floor, that which I have heard of Yahuwah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, I have declared unto you. The highway of righteousness, Isaiah 35:8. And an highway shall be there, and a way it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those, that is the elect. Revelation 16:12-16. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east should be prepared. So these people are the people of the way, the highway of righteousness, and they are the city of the elect that will be able to withstand and hinder the horses of the four nations and their angels that shall arise from the Euphrates. Let's quickly review what we already learned. What happens when the four angels are released from the river Euphrates? A third part of men are killed with fire, smoke, and brimstone, which comes out of the mouths in judgment. And the remnant of men which were not killed by these plagues repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils, idols of gold, and of silver, and of brass, and stone, and wood. So they repented not of their murder and sorcery, neither their fornication, nor of their theft. And so this is what all the Gentile nations are being judged for, their idolatry. We learned in Enoch and Jubilees, Yahweh chained 90% of the fallen angels in the deep of the abyss, in the infernal deep, and within the firmament. They cannot access heaven, the set apart place, which is also called Basora, by the way, and impossible to obtain, walled up place that we pursue via Yahusha. And we found that some of these chained ones are the 7 planets, angels that cause man to worship them and afflict men. Yahweh uses the fallen to judge the earth, even Satan, as we saw when he tested Job. The 4 angels also have a relationship to the 4 beast systems and the final beast, Babylon. The final beast system stems from them because they're horns, because come his. And this is why we can see, though it's unusual to think about the idea, that the Euphrates is tied to the west. And these angels are linked to the nations of the 4 beasts, or angels of each of the nations that overcame, oppressed, and afflicted Israel. Their combined empire is geographically the Northwest and the whole world. We also learned that the 7 streams of Egypt that will be smitten in Isaiah for Yasharel to return to Jerusalem are also tied to the Euphrates, and they are in the west, in the Atlantic. We looked at the cardinal directions in relation to their blessings and stigmas, finding everything seems to die in the west. The sun and the moon and the stars all wane, and it is called Achor. And we have acres here. It is where a fire in the west torments, and all the luminaries descend there. Adam and Eve first dwelt in the west. After the flood, everyone was relocated to the east to start fresh. And that, the west, is the ancient world of the past, Eretz Azarath, associated with the Ashtaroth, the star of wrath. It is the symbol of the bull, which is also linked to the fallen angels and Egypt. With many pyramids, it is America, South America, and Australia, and the South Pacific. We learned that Nagid and Kadim, the south and east, are Shem's land, and that is where Yah descends and dwells, and that it is where the 4 rivers issue from. His symbol is the lion, and Orion, the star system, points to the east and west there. Shem also got the Pleiades, the Big Dipper, symbolizing the 7 spirits of the 7 churches. It is both the east and the south. It is India, Africa, Western Europe, and half of South America. And lastly, we learned why the north, Saffron, is nasty. Hoarfrost, cold winds come from here, and people who oppress and enslave. Tartaria is tied to it also. It is linked to Japheth. And we note in Revelation 9:20 that these Gentile nations are judged with brimstone, but they do not repent of their idol worship, because their idols are the angel beasts they have served to spoil and oppress Israel. We really saw Japheth was tied to child stealing and bondage. The north is where the indrawing sea or abyss is, and it's where fire pours out and cleanses all the waters of the ocean and Rubus Negro. It's where Satan is, its location. It is associated with the 7 sisters, or the Pleiades, who rule through the planets as the zooxate Augies. The zooxate Augies. So the word has ox and og in it because of Japheth's link to Gog and Magog and the giants. And these align with the planets or stars associated with astrology, who are imprisoned in the earth. These are the Celts, the Greeks, the Vikings, the Danes, the Medo-Persians, the Romans, the Cimmerians, the Gomerians, possibly the Philistines. The area is Canada and Eastern Europe. And finally, we also learned that the Tower of Babel was set up in the midst of the sea between the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, with each one of them holding one of the 3 bases of the tower in each of their lands. The Gulf of Mexico, Lewis Babel Ecological Reserve in Canada, and the Riat structure in Mauritania, Africa. According to the book of Jubilees, this is what the lots of Shem, Ham, and Japheth looked like. So let's start looking at what Euphrates means. The word is prata. The first letter is the pei in the Hebrew alphabet, and it means the mouth face out of which the word of Yah comes. So it's a pretty serious river name. So Parath is from an unused root word meaning to break forth with rushing. A river of the east, the Euphrates Nahar, from Strong's H5102, a stream that includes the sea. It is the expectation of the Nile. In other words, the Nile awaits it. The word Nahar is a word for stream, and figuratively it means prosperity, flood, river, and it denotes seawater. It rises from the mountains of Armenia back again to the Parath, and it is south of Babylon. It unites with the Tigris River and empties into the Persian Gulf. It is sweet water from a fruit-bearing tree. It means to break forth with rushing. The Arabic is afarat, implying it originates from a faraway place that again is a tree, or the beginning and the end, aleph ta. So it's tied to Shem's land, and it's in the Garden of Eden. That's where it comes from. Jubilees 8, Shem got the Garden of Eden for his homeland, and Noah was pleased. His lot came out that way from Yahweh. And this portion came forth by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever unto his generations forevermore. And Noah rejoiced that his portion came forth for Shem and for his sons. And he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in prophecy, for he said, Blessed be Yahuwah Elohim of Shem, and may Yahuwah dwell in the dwelling of Shem. And he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies, and the dwelling place of Yahweh, and Mount Sinai, and the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as holy places facing each other. And the kingdom of Israel is in Eden, the origin of the four rivers. Verse 20, and he knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons unto the generations forever, the whole land of Eden, and the whole land of the Red Sea, the whole land of the east and India, and on the Red Sea and the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Kaphtor, and all the mountains of Shanir or Shinar, and Amana, and the mountains of Asher in the north, and the land of Elam, and Asher, and Babel. So this includes Babel, and Susan, and Madai, and all the mountains of Ararat, and all the regions beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Ashur, towards the north, a blessed and spacious land. All that is in it is very good. So I highlighted Shinar here. It is different from the second Babylon. Please keep that in mind. Heaven's Gate. The gate of heaven is where Eden is located, out of which springs the Jordan, which is the headwater of the four rivers, 5 rivers of the earth. When we read scripture, we learn that Jacob fell asleep and dreamed of Jacob's ladder, and this is where he wrestled with the angel of Yahweh. He wrestled with the angel of Yahweh because Yahweh comes in the form of an angel, just as he came in the form of a man, the Savior, to save us. He communicates with his creatures in their image, oftentimes. We will become like angels. So when Jacob wrestled with the angel of Yahweh, he was wrestling with Yahweh. And this ladder that he saw in Genesis, he described as having angels ascending and descending upon it. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on earth. And the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of Elohim ascending and descending on it. And behold, Yahuwah stood above it and said, I am Yahuwah Elohim of Abraham thy father, and the Elohim of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And Jacob awakened out of his sleep and said, Surely Yahuwah is in this place, and I knew it not. And he was afraid and said, How dreadful is this place! This is none other but the home of Elohim, and this the gate of heaven. The 4 rivers and Garden of Eden are also linked to 4 great mountains of Yahweh. Jubilees 2:7 says, On that day he created for them all the seas according to their separate gathering places, and all the rivers and the gatherings of the waters in the mountains, and on all the earth, and all the lakes, and all the dew of the earth, and the seed which is sown, and all sprouting things, and fruit-bearing trees, and trees of the wood, and the Garden of Eden in Eden, and all. These four great works Yahweh created on the third day. So just as these things were created on the third day, Moses and Yasharel were commanded to be ready to go up and become the kingdom of priests on the third day on Mount Sinai. And similarly, today we are awaiting Yeshua's return on the third day, the consummation of time. So the rivers and lakes are significant to this. The Euphrates and the seven streams in particular signal to end times. And so the mountains are very important. And so we'll start with Eden and the Jordan to begin this quest. We'll need to look first at the name Eden and what the Hebrew letters mean, and then the dispersion of the four rivers and what their names mean will also give us a clue as to the locations of the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the river Euphrates. Let's take a look at the scripture on the creation of the four rivers in Eden, Genesis 28, 8 through 14. And Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made Yahuwah Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's clear throughout all of Scripture that the land of Shem is almost perfectly divided by the Jordan River. It is the fulcrum around which the entire land of Israel is oriented. Living waters spiral out from it like branches of a tree. And the river Jordan went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. The name of one is Pishon, the same compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon, the same compasseth the whole land of Kush. And the name also of the third river, Hiddekel or Tigris, goeth toward the east side of Ashur. And the fourth river is Parath, Euphrates. Notice the river Jordan or Yarden went out of the garden. Then it was parted. That means there is a single river that then splits into four. So we're looking for five rivers, out of which four issue. So the word Aden or Eden is Aleph or A, D or Dalet, and Nun, ADN. Now it could begin with the Aleph, which means strong power or leader, or the first, but translators put it as Ayin. Unfortunately, this could be the all-seeing eye. However, Ayin can also refer to Yahuwah and the heavens. Yah does say his people are the apple of his eye. Perhaps his land is also. Lake Victoria in Africa looks like an eye, and the Congo has a mountainous area shaped like a spiritual eye, shaped like the pineal gland. The letter Ayin also means ardent, burning, glowing, ardent flames. We use it to describe fervent love, the place of fervent love. But is this also a place to watch for judgment from, or where issues from? So Eden is spelled Aleph, Dalet, Nun, or Ayin, Dalet, Nun. So the D for door, Dalet, symbolizes the door pathway of life that you move or enter into, where there is a hanging or covering. And the last letter, N, Nun, means a place where the sun, seed, or air continues or comes from. So we can see from all of this that this is the first place where the door and pathway to eternal life is. And you must bow to enter into it, just like you do a tent. It has a covering over it, which means it's hidden, set apart. Water poured out on the whole earth here, and the garden was flooded, and the trees thrown down. So we talked about the east, the direction, the location, the eastward, and then it starts with this Q, Kuf, the place where the serpent entered into the earth, if you look at the Kuf letter, all right? And it's the door, the secret door, and it's where water, blood, and chaos come from. We went over the Nun, but this is a place where the seed comes from and the waters of life are. So there are waters above us and waters below us, as it says in Genesis, when Yah separated the firmament. And so the waters in the heaven, as I've said before, are a combination of fire and water. That's why there's a lake of fire before Yahuwah. So it is both oil and water. And the stars were seated by the waters of the Shemaim, the waters of the heaven above. So this is a place of creation, reproduction of the seed of Yah. And all of the children of Yah, including the angels, are the seed of Yah. So this is where what Nun, the seed, means. And so this is a place of the continuance of the sun and air of the earth. East means eastward. East means eastward, like a quadrant location ward of the earth. Translations of the Bible say Yahuwah planted the garden eastward, but the Hebrew word means in the east, indicating a center point. It's the location of the dividing of rivers. It's not just a direction, it's a location. The word for plant is nata. And again, we have noon and the ta. So noon means to continue. We already went over this, sun, seed, air. And then the tet is the second letter, and it means basket or symbol, like an arc, a circle with a cross partitioning it, like north, south, east, and west. It means like a basket to surround or contain with mud. So the garden of righteousness and the tree of life and wisdom would be here, which means to surround a seed with mud and plant it. And this tet is also, obviously, like I said, the symbol of the ark. And so Eden, Yasharel, and heaven are the final ark of salvation. It also looks like a central mountain with 4 rivers extending from it. Now, I emphasize again that Jordan was one river from which 4 rivers exit. It is Besora and is set apart, withheld, protected, impossible to obtain place. Isaiah 61:3 says, Israel is his plant of righteousness, and he has called Israel a green olive tree in Jeremiah 11:16. There are multiple stages to the garden in its connection to the forefathers coming home after Yahuwah planted the garden there. The Jordan River. The Jordan is important because all rivers branch out of it. So the full word is Yarden. All right. Remember, Yod is the first letter in Yahweh and Yahusha's name. It seems the fallen angels would watch the door as with their offspring, as should we, but they desire to return and overthrow heaven as Nimrod planned to do, awaiting the moment of opening. We do watch Yah and the heavens, but it is Yahusha who saves us and gives us access to the Besora. Yerad means to descend, literally go downwards, or conventionally to a lower region, to a shore, a boundary, or the enemy, figuratively to fall, to bring down abundantly, to carry down, cast down, fall down, get down, hang down, let down. It's a place of light and the put down. It's a place of sinking and being subdued or taken down. So this is a right hand casting down. All right. So, Eden was thrown down. All right. The river is significant, Jordan, because it divides the land of Israel, and it's the most important river given by the right hand of Yah, the most important beginning river from the door of heaven seeding the earth. Yerad means to descend, literally go downwards, or conventionally to a lower region. And most important, to connection to heaven, Yahweh, and the seed. Eden is where Adam and Eve fell from heaven. But as we are in end times, their enemies will fall by the living waters of Eden, Yahusha. Over 10 million were unalived in the Congo alone, and their blood was shed, just like the blood of the Israelite babies flowed in the Nile and made it red with blood at Mitzrayim's judgment. So there will be a reaping for bloodshed and slavery flowing out of the heart of Africa to the northwest. They will be brought down, cast down, subdued, and taken down. And this is what the reaping of the 4 beasts or angels chained in the river Euphrates, which is in the northwest Babylon, will be. Could this be the right hand that casts down? When we hear about the 4th beast in Daniel 7:25, it says that he shall speak great words against the Most High and consume the saints of the Most High and think that he may change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, and a dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it until the end. So this is a double prophecy. It happened before with the Roman kingdom, which was resurrected again. And this will take place, as it says here, until a time, times, and a dividing end of time. That's 1,260 years. And ironically, that's almost coming up on the amount of time it has been since the Khazarian conversion in the 8th century. Okay, so all of this has already happened to the saints of the Most High. Obviously, the Christians and other nations believe that this is what's about to happen, but it's already happened. And so this is the time of that ending. And this is when the fourth beast, Babylon kingdom, will be thrown down and destroyed by the right hand, Yahusha. Daniel 8:23 echoes this as well with reference to the Greeks. It says, at the end of their kingdom, when the rebellious shall be consumed, a king of fierce countenance and understanding, dark sentences shall stand up. This is Rome. And his power shall be mighty, but not in his strength. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and he shall prosper and practice and destroy the mighty and the holy people. Haven't the holy people been destroyed and worn out? And through his policy, his police, also shall he cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall extol himself in his heart. And by peace shall he destroy many. Don't they always say peace, peace? When you read the Maccabees, they constantly say, oh, let's make a peace treaty. And then they take the leader captive and kill him. They're always lying. And so by peace shall he destroy many. Isn't this what the American government, the British, do in all these third world countries? They say, oh, we're gonna send the UN in to keep peace because you all are fighting, and they create confusion and destruction. So that is their ministry of false peace. And then it says, he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken down without hand. So that's without a human hand. All right. And so it looks like Yahusha will be their rod of Yah and the final judge in this double prophecy. An Atlas Obscura description of the source of the Zambezi as a tourist spot reads like another of the many poorly crafted Western lies, yet also seems to tell the truth. The source of the Zambezi is located in a small protected forest. It's surrounded by rich Miombo woodlands and a strip of Mishutu forest. Within the protected forest, elevated wooden walkways lead to the source and follow the path of the river down the valley for some distance. The source itself is a small spring that bubbles beneath the bottom of a fallen tree. Now, if you're familiar with the concept of ancient tree or ancient trees, you will know that many of the large mountains we see on Earth are the remaining stumps of giant trees. Not all, but some. Ezekiel 31:17 states that all of the trees of Eden, including the best from Lebanon, were brought down to the grave. They fell down, and we know that Eden is associated with the tree of life and many trees falling from it. So Ezekiel 31:18 describes the Almighty bringing down a tree representing Pharaoh and the people of Egypt. To whom art thou thus like in glory, in greatness among the trees of Eden? Yet shalt thou be brought down from the trees of Eden unto the nether parts of the earth. Thou shalt lie in the midst of the uncircumcised with them that be slain by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith Yahuwah Elohim. And so this is also part of the coming prophecy that's going to come again. Do you know, in fact, that there is an African tree, the baobab tree, that is famous for housing water within it for entire villages, even in droughts? A large baobab can store as much as 136,000 liters of water, according to southward.net. In Madagascar, they are natural cisterns. The barrel of the trunk of the baobab, characterized by a trunk that can reach around 8 meters, is sort of a natural air-conditioned cistern capable of holding and conserving rainwater. It is how the Mahafale communities cope with the harshest and hottest periods of the year. According to Enoch, the angels made a work of the trees. They cut them down. This is the reason for less oxygen on the planet and our resulting smaller stature mentioned in the book of 2nd Esdras. Says Enoch chapter 66, in those days the word of Elohim came to me and said, Noah, behold, thy lot has ascended up to me, a lot void of crime, a lot beloved and upright. Now then shall the angels labor at the trees, but when they proceed to do this, I will put my hand upon it and preserve it. So why am I saying this? Well, when we look at this 1655 Kirchner map of Africa, around Zaire and the Congo and everything, we see that there are, I don't know, 5 large bodies of water here. One is Lake Malemba up there, and it looks like Zaire near the center, and maybe to the top right is Lake Victoria. There's some other lake here, but we come down to the bottom and we see this kind of mountain-looking thing with water inside of it. Didn't Moses strike the rock in Psalm 28:21 and Numbers 20 and water issue forth? Absolutely. Read the scripture here. And let's look at the map today. When we look at the map today, again, we just see 3 large bodies of water. Maybe it's because it's further away, and this is from another more ancient map on the left, but on the right, we go over and we just see the largest lake is Lake Malawi on the bottom right, and then in Mozambique, and then up at the top in Kenya and Uganda, we see Lake Victoria. So what happened to these other lakes and waters? Let's take a look at another map. On this Liechtenstein 1596 map, we see on the left there is a Lake Zaire, and then we see on the right there is the old Abyssinia, which is called Lake Victoria today. So they've been hiding things. Again, on this map, we see mountains containing water. Now, Zaire is very much a word like Mount Seir, and there was Mount Seir in the southwestern kingdom of Judah. In this choreograph in Origina Sinili, so Sinai, right, we see the Amorite Mountains and the Horite Mountains. Amorite Mountains, Mounds Hores. And this is basically in the same spot on just a different version of that map. And we see all these pools and lakes and waters that are dividing and dividing again, right? And so this is basically in the same spot. Here's the Hebrew word for Pishon and words associated, Pei, Yod, Shin, Nun. And here's the scripture again. The name of one is Pishon, the same compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. So this river has a lot of precious metals and so forth around it. The P in Pishon describes an opening like a mouth that blows and scatters. Then the Shin presses it to a tight point. Then Nun refers to the seed again, continually dividing. This may indicate the river is like a mouth opening and closing and finally scattering. Pishon means the river that divides continuously. So we are seeking a river that divides continuously. The Zambezi and Congo River and other major aspects of the Nile are connected to it, in particular, Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls are part of the Zambezi River, which is the largest waterfall in the world. It's located on the Zimbabwe side of Victoria Falls National Park and on the Zambia side of the Mosiah Tunya National Park. Notice how it sounds like Moses and Messiah entered via 2 gates in 2 different countries, which means you see the entire length of the largest waterfall in the world. It is the confluence of many Central African waterways in the land, and Africa, of course, is the largest land on the planet. The Zambezi River is actually sourced near the Congo, Malinga District, Zambia, Miombo Woodlands, and a strip of Mushitu Forest that's the largest forest in the world. And these ancient woodlands also play a continental and even global role. They protect the vital watersheds, including the Zambezi. The most you can get is an image of some waterfalls far from what is called the source. This vast forest seems to be a mountain or giant hill beneath which are water sources. So it's some kind of like, the mounds in America that are really Egyptian pyramids. Seems like it's some kind of a cover-up going on. So what is said about the Pishon is that in that land is Ophir or Havilah. And so this Ramirez 1754 map depicts Ophir and gold in this land. So this is clearly the Pishon. The Zambezi River, which is the river we're talking about, Pishon, takes a 2,700 kilometer mile to dump into the Indian Ocean. But on its way, it meets with Lake Malawi, which is part of the Nile. And now, of course, the Nile is actually the Jordan River, but we'll get into that in a minute. Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa have the largest gold resources in Africa. The Pishon dumps right into the Indian Ocean, leading to the Pacific Ocean, housing all of the South Pacific islands and providing them with water. But the key thing to really notice is that it splits into multiple little rivers joining with the Nile, going down to Limpopo, the Orange River, and even spilling out into the Atlantic. And it also connects up to the Congo River. So it really is a river that scatters. We can see from this map that the Congo River and Zambezi River feed back into what is called the Nile. And even Lake Victoria, if you look on the right there, Lake Tanganyika feeds and pours water into Lake Victoria, and Lake Victoria pours water into it, and the Congo pours water into all of them. The Congo also dumps west into the ocean to actually go and connect over in South America to form a river. And so it's almost as though the Pishon, because it connects to this, the Zambezi River, it sprays in all directions down the chin of Africa. However, the Congo River feeds everything. It feeds even the White Nile. You can see here the deeper connections in this image of the Congo River sitting on the cheekbone of the head and the area of the pineal gland of the head of Africa. And so I would venture to say that the true Gihon River is really the Niger River, because the Congo actually feeds it by feeding the White Nile and actually feeding up north. And so I believe that the Congo River and the true basin or tree of water is coming from the central Congo region. This is where I believe the Mount of Yah is, and Zion in the southern kingdom of Israel is. And given that there over 10 million died under the Dutch there, and 8 million in the last since 1996 over Colton in that region, it is the most contended for place on the planet. And the truth is surrounded by an army of lies. Family, I may do a more detailed scientific video next week, or get my book when I publish it, Yah willing. But this Africa Tablia map clearly calls this region in the Congo Idorum Terra. And this translates to land of the Hebrews, being now where the so-called Congo is, and formerly called Abyssinia. And there was a lower and upper Ethiopia in Abyssinia. And remember, the upper portion of the land, highest point on the land, is in Africa. It's the highest point on the planted tree within the earth. So the upper Ethiopia would be where the kingdom of Yehuda is. And I believe the lower Ethiopia is where the northern kingdom was. Genesis continued, verse 3. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same compasseth the whole land of Kush. So we know that Gihon compasses the whole land of Kush. Kush is one of the sons of Ham, the eldest son. Kush is the firstborn son. So he will have the lion's share of the territory of Ham, because that's what goes to the firstborn son. He gets the double portion. And so we can safely assume that much of the land of Ham might have been named for him at the time of Moses, because it was named that at the time of the departure of Yasharel. From this, we can assume the West and Old World for the Gihon, although, of course, it's going to run through the land of Eden first. So if you just look at this, one of the parts of the Congo River here, it does look like a mouth that blows and scatters. So you can see how it would lead into the Pishon. And it scatters literally north, south, east, and west. But beyond that, let's look at Gihon. The letters are G-Y-H-N. So Gamel, gather, walk, carry, Yod, give her right hand. We've been over that. Hey, look, behold, reveal, breath. And we already talked about what noon, the seed, means. And this surrounds the land, really the land of Kush. This is basically the land and people of the promise who walk around the earth, work, deliverance, worship. They give, reveal life, watch Yahuwah, and are the sons and heirs of the kingdom. These are the waters of life, the living waters. And so once again, this land then goes on to surround the land of Kush, which is over in South America. And when we look at the map of South America, we see, if we're looking at Niger as the Gihon River, even though other rivers further down also dump into the Atlantic Ocean, I think Niger is the true Gihon River. It leads over into the Amazon River and then pours down all the way into central South America, the southern tip of South America, and into the ocean. So this is the Gihon. The Niger River, which I believe is the Gihon, would actually enter in around the area of the Gulf of Mexico and then pour down around the land of Ham and into the Amazon. And that's why it surrounds the whole land of Kush. The Congo is the deepest river in the world, with measured depths of around 220 meters or 720 feet. And Victoria Falls, the largest waterfalls, Lake Victoria, the world's second largest lake. The Caspian Sea is the first. The Congo River even pushes towards the Nile, even in addition to flowing into the sea. Regardless, we can see that all of these rivers flow into Victoria Lake and the Nile. And that's important because that's where Uganda and Kenya are. And basically, this is where the Ish folk originally tried to first set up Israel, right here in Africa, on the edge of the Congo. Jewish Virtual Library documents in 1903 that Theodore Herzl sought to first establish a Jewish homeland via Britain's Joseph Chamberlain, the British colonial secretary, and other high-ranking officials who agreed in principle to Jewish settlement in East Africa. At the Sixth Zionist Congress at Basel on August 26, 1903, Herzl proposed the British Uganda program as a temporary refuge for Jews in Russia in immediate danger. By a vote of 295 to 178, it was decided to send an expedition to examine the territory proposed. 3 days later, the British government released an official document allocating a Jewish territory in East Africa on the conditions which enable members to observe their national customs. And I want you to know right now, so that's some evidence, but the damming of many waters along the Niles has confused the geography of what I call the Jordan. So the Nile is truly the Jordan River. Because the Jordan clearly ran north-south, according to today's conventional ideas, the land was divided east-west. The Nile seems to be the best option for the Jordan, as multiple rivers seem to stem from it. And remember, Israel crossed the Jordan to enter the east side of the Promised Land, while much of Israel had set up towns and planted themselves on the west side of the Jordan. Many contentions over lands and conquests are defined around the Jordan River. And in particular, here in the book of Joshua, chapter 3, the priests carried the ark of Yahuwah over the Jordan. They crossed over it on dry ground in order to settle finally in the land of Yehuda. And so that Nile is the biggest river on earth, and it would be the hardest river to cross with an ark, much like crossing the Red Sea. Genesis 2:14. The name also of the third river is Hiddekel. This goeth toward the east side of Ashur, and the fourth is Parath, the Euphrates. I think these two are mentioned together because they are connected. All right. And this is defined in the scripture and Strong's as one of the rivers of Eden, which course towards Assyria, better known as the Tigris. And the Hiddekel is a rapid river. Now, when you go and you look at rivers in the east, this is what is said about what is called the Tigris or Ganges River today. An exciting rafting journey across kilometers of untamed river and violent rapids allows you to explore Ganga, or the Ganges, in its many faces. If you haven't attempted rafting on the Ganga River before, it is time to do so. This is a rapidly running, huge river that comes down from the high deck of the Himalayan plateau. It is a deck, like a high deck hull. So when we look at the letters, it's Het, Dalet, Kuf, and then Lamed. So it implies that it is high up top and set apart like a wall. Now, the mountain range of the Himalayas and the mountain range of Ararat, and also India has a great wall and China have a great wall, and they all wall away Europe. So this is a set apart wall. And then there's a door here. And it also, the setting of the sun is indicated by the letter Kuf. And the L, or the Lamed, also indicates the place of a leader. And so if this was to be the perspective, this would be the west. Okay, this would be going towards the west. This would be a border, a water border and mountain border to the leader of the west, where the sun goes down. I've shown you in these more ancient maps from the 1600s, and you can read the names here, that India was not occupied by the Indians previously. In fact, over to the west of the Ganges, what we see in these maps, and by west I mean towards China, we see India extra listed. And we see in the land of India names like Jerusalem, Candia for Queen Candace. We see words like Gazarite, implying the Gazarite scattering. Israel comes from the Gaza Strip. And so I don't believe this is just scattering. I believe that this was the land of Shem. This was actually the land of the Assyrians, where Israel was taken captive to. But why am I saying this? Well, we're defining the land of Shem, and we're defining where the Ganges River is. And the Ganges River does come down, but it actually comes down through the Caspian Sea. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but we see India extra listed. And we see in the land of India names like Jerusalem, Candia for Queen Candace. We see words like Gazarite, implying the Gazarite scattering. Israel comes from the, but here's more proof to the Indies being more so to the west. You can see the word Indies there on the right. You can see that Persia is still where it was before, but what you'll see with the red words Caucasus, Turkey there, that's originally where the Caucasus Mountains were. So right here again, we see Turkestan is right above this area, where in the other map, these Caucasus Mountains, these Mount Caucasus mountains were listed. You can see over here to the left in this white map, what you see is the Caspian Sea, which is the largest sea in the world. Okay, this white sea. You can see that the Ganges River runs all the way down from there across the high deck of El, across the Hiddekel. These are some of the highest mountains in the world. And then it pours into the Ganges River. But what it's important to understand here also is that the Ganges River pours into the Chinese Yangtze River. And you can see in these maps here that I have shown that this was at a time when the West, when the East Indians and the Chinese were all over on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the high deck, and they began to encroach their way in. And so here's the Yangtze River, and it goes all the way into the Himalayan steppes, and it connects with the Ganges River as well. And so here's in the language of Media and Persia, Tigris meant arrow. So an arrow would shoot down from the mountains, right? It would have a lot of velocity. But when we see the word dike, we think of a wall that shores up and releases water, right? So it's hidden waters behind a wall. So again, Strong's tells us that Hiddekel is a rapid river. That's why it runs downhill. It runs over mountains. Notice the Ethiopians are called Tigray. This is tied to the Tigris River that comes out of it and then also pours down in the area of the Middle East and Assyria. So these are really just offshoots of this huge Hiddekel River that goes all the way into China and all the way into the Great Pacific. So the Tigres are associated with the tigers and Tiglath-Pileser, the Assyrian, okay, which is how he's described as Tiglath-Pileser or Pilser in the Bible. And so again, we know this is their land. This is a place of the leader. And I'm going to take you back to this intersection again when we get to the Euphrates. So put a pin in this. Now, we are going to find that Daniel actually sits down by the great river, which is Hiddekel. So that is the river in Babylon. So if this is Hiddekel, that's not India. That's actually Babylon, the land of the Assyrians or slash Aramites. Tigris are a mix of Shem and Ham. And it relates to Mesopotamia and the Tigris River. Of course, we know the Bengal tiger is really from the region of India. And I think that the Ganges, Hiddekel, Tigris, and Tina are really all the same rivers. I've shown you that the Tina is also indicated there in other modern maps. Tigris are a mix of Shem and Ham. This water, like I said, is actually coming out of the Caspian Sea and then trickling down and westward. And the Caspian Sea is supposed to be the largest freshwater source in the world. But I actually believe the largest one in the world is probably that Zaire one in the Congo. But anyway, put a pin in this Caspian Sea water source. According to Illustrations of America, John Ogilvy's book, the earth was divided into three parts, and the mountains Caliphate and Abel, now the jaws of Gibraltar, were opened up by an earthquake, receiving also an inundation from the Atlantic, which now makes the Mediterranean Sea, being before all one continued land. So you see, the water originally pushed up through the Nile into what is known as the Mediterranean Sea. However, it's being blocked by the Aswad Dam and two to three other dams built by the Russians years ago. So it doesn't pour as forcefully into the Mediterranean, which has a very low salinity. These waters coming from the Nile further go right into the Black Sea, or the Mare Negro, to indicate the land of Shem. Here's the old name. And hence then into the Caspian Sea. And then the Caspian pours into India and the Ganges and the Yangtzes, which then pours into the Pacific. I hope that's clear. Mauritania's Mediterranean Sea was originally called the Mauritanian Sea, or Moor. Moor means blackamoor, reflector of the light, and implies Castine. So they would have been in what is called Western Europe today, where the 12 tribes originally scattered to afterwards, especially the 10 tribes. Why am I saying this? This is why most of these ancient maps show the word Moor for these waterways, for the Caspian, for the Negro or Black Sea, or for the Mediterranean, because it means place of the Moors. But when I want you to look at this map, this is the flight path of they say it is a falcon. All right. And if you will look at the journey of the falcon from the Netherlands, now the Netherlands is Japheth's land, he only seems to go across land in a straight line, and he goes all the way down to South Africa. But if we were to pull these waterways back together and reverse Pangea, as I just showed you an example of in the last video previous to this image, this would probably be a straight line. And this would be the force of the Nile moving all the way into the North Sea, spewing out from Central Africa, the DR Congo, and the rivers beneath the trees and mountains there, and Lake Victoria and that Lake Zaire, and then pushing north and south in both directions. I want you to hold on to the idea that it pushes north and south, because I want you to consider, and I've already proven, that it's maybe also pushing east and west. But we're going to get into that when we look at the Euphrates. I want you to hold on to this as we go into prophecy. The Black Sea was once called Mare Negro, very low saline, as I said, and it was also called the Danube, maybe pointing to the tribe of Dan, the Danubian River. Nub means Nubian, black, or Nebu, prophet. The distance from Egypt to the Black Sea is about 900 miles. And it's easy to visually push the land masses back together once you see it's North Africa. You can't unsee it. If the Amazon River flows 200 miles into the ocean because of its force, and the Nile is one of the most powerful water-filled rivers in the world, with the Congo being the deepest, To be specific, the White Nile is fed by the deepest river in the world, which is the Congo River. So you can imagine the force and volume of the water. It would go a lot further than 200 miles. So if a non-dammed Nile, wouldn't it flow far further than the Mediterranean and perhaps into the Black Sea, which is also low saline? We're going to talk about that later. Let's get into prophecy. When Joshua takes Israel back into the land, Joshua 24:2 says, "Your fathers served other gods beyond the river Euphrates." When was this? The river Euphrates is the first location of post-flood kingdoms of Nimrod and Babel. The mistake that is often made that misdirects people to suppose that everyone spread out involuntarily from Mount Ararat to land in Shinar is that it is assumed Mesopotamia or India, Babylon, is Sumeria. Also, Ham's land is in the west, as we have shown in the previous video. It is in America, Australia, the west side of South America. The Gihon is said to have surrounded all the land of Kush, who was the father of Nimrod. And the mountains of fire are mentioned. The Pacific is called the Ring of Fire here on the right. Unfortunately, the whole allocation of lands is entirely ignored by almost every Israelite and Gentile teacher. Most prefer to learn the ways of the Gentiles. The river Euphrates, the first location of post-flood kingdoms of Nimrod and Babel. The mistake often made that misdirects people to suppose that everyone spread out involuntarily from Mount Ararat and land up in Shinar is that it is assumed that Mesopotamia or India, Babylon, is Sumeria all by itself. But Sumeria means Shem's area. It's conflated then with Shinar. But firstborn son, Shem's lot, was half the planet. As I've said, Shinar is a specific place, Babel and Atlantis. Jubilees says of the families of Noah, for they departed from the land of Ararat eastward towards Shinar. Remember, east is a location. It is the eastward, not toward the east. Why? Shinar is Shem's land, which is part of the south and all of the east. Ararat is also eastward. How do we know? Genesis 1:1 says, "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there." It says they journeyed from the east, not to the east. In other words, this is located in the east ward. Shinar was described as the shining land because it has 7 streams in it. It is even thought to be Atlantis, as I have said. Because most omit the Jubilees account of land lots, everyone is deceived. According to the book, Ancient America, over and against Africa lies a very great island in the vast ocean, many days' sail from Libya westward. The soil there is very fruitful, a great part whereof is mountainous, but much likewise champagne, which is the most sweet and pleasant part, for it is watered by several navigable streams and beautified with many gardens of pleasure, planted with diverse sorts of trees and an abundance of orchards. The towns are adorned with stately buildings and banqueting houses, pleasantly situated in their gardens and orchards. Diodorus Silencius. And it says, the Phoenicians' antiquity of the ruins. Tyrians living found on the coast beyond the Pillars of Hercules sailed along by the coast of Africa. One of their ships on a sudden was driven by a furious storm far off into the main ocean, and they laid under this violent tempest many days. At length, they arrived at this island. And so you see in these illustrations, there are approximately 7 streams around this, one of which would include the Euphrates as a major waterway. Genesis 10:8-12 tells us all about Nimrod. And Kush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahuwah, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahuwah. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, here are the cities, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that went forth Asher and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin, between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. The Epic of Gilgamesh says, you know the city Shuruppak. It stands on the banks of the Euphrates. That city grew old, and the gods that were in it were old. So we know that Nimrod, who is Gilgamesh, was in the land of Shinar that was built on the river Euphrates. The Mesopotamian civilization developed along the Tigris and the Euphrates river systems. All of Nimrod's cities were built along the Euphrates. We will see what is said about the attraction to the old world at the time. After all, this is where Nimrod got access to the secret knowledge again. Nimrod was the first grand master of Freemasonry, the first builder. So we can look at the information we have from them to learn more about this. When we refer to the Jubilees land lots, we see that Shinar or Babel is not east of his land, but it's on the western side. However, it's east of Egypt and Kush's land, Nimrod's land. Egypt was coveted by everyone post-flood because that is where Adam and Eve and the old world was. Ham got all his magic and builder technology from there. And one of the sons of Shem, Canaan, found something written on a stone in Jubilees that caused him to sin. Likely it was in the old world, and this is how the sons of Shem began to sin, likely owing to it. This is likely how the Shemites became the priests of On, or today the priests of On instead of the priests of Yahweh. And that's why Joshua 24:2 says, your fathers served other gods beyond the river Euphrates. Arphaxad had a son named Canim in Jubilees 8:1. And his son grew, and his father taught him writing. And he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize himself a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on a rock, and he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owing to it. For it contained the teaching of the watchers, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars in all the signs of the heaven. And he wrote it down and said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak of it to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. It's very likely that Canim, don't name your son Cain, was learning these ancient mystic arts of Oriental Freemasonry. And I'm not going to get into that, but I will quote some of their historical references. The grand division of the East and West. The deluge of the Great Flood drove land masses apart about 50 years after the flood, page 28. For the grand division of the Eastern and Western hemispheres through the natural effect of causes operating from the deluge did not take place till about half a century after that event, and thus a subject has uniformly puzzled the most learned historians and philosophers. These stupendous events being connected primarily with the great destruction and recovery of equilibrium in the solar system, and secondly, with the consequent wrecking of the continent of America when the globe became involved in the consequences of the disorder of the skies. America, known to the mystic as Atlantis, when this ruin befell Babel, was the seat of the greatest empire that has ever existed, and its irresistible armies were terrorizing all of Europe and Asia. In other words, when Babel fell, this is my interpretation of this, Nimrod was ruling the world. America, Atlantis, and as the curtain which has hitherto concealed the prehistoric connection between the peoples of ancient Egypt and America is lifted, it will be seen that the people of the eagle on the Nile, being descended from the original people of the eagle on this continent, the twain are one, and that prehistoric America was the Oriental Egypt or Eagle Land prior to the mighty dispensation in the days of Peleg, when the earth was divided, and the great globe itself was nearly rent asunder. So, of course, they call it the globe, but I'm reading you all of this to say that America is Egypt, and America is also considered and connected to Atlantis. Let's look for more on this. Clearly, here Nimrod was ruling in Atlantis, and it was shaken. And this was right after the land lots were given and the people went down to Shinar. The book Ancient America, page 178 and 179 say, Solon had knowledge of the Atlantes before he went to Egypt, but he heard there for the first time this account of their island and of its disappearance in a frightful cataclysm. Boekil, in his commentary on Plato, mentions islands in the exterior sea beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and says it was known that in one of these islands the inhabitants preserved from their ancestors a remembrance of Atlantis, an extremely large island which for a long time held dominion over all the islands of the Atlantic Ocean. The island of Atlantis, larger than Libya and Asia Minor together, was the extended portion of the American continent. Brasir de Bonner Bonnerk claims that there is in the old Central American books a constant tradition of an immense catastrophe of the character supposed, that this tradition existed everywhere among the people when they first became known to Europeans, and that recollections of the catastrophe were preserved in some of their festivals, especially in one celebrated in the month of Escali, which was instituted to commemorate this frightful destruction of land and people, and in which princes and people humbled themselves before the divinity and besought him to withhold a return of such terrible calamities. This tradition affirms that part of the continent extending into the Atlantic was destroyed in the manner supposed, and appears to indicate that the destruction was accomplished by a succession of frightful convulsions. The land was shaken by frightful earthquakes, and the waves of the sea combined with volcanic fires to overwhelm and engulf it. Each convulsion swept away portions of the land until the whole disappeared, leaving the line of coast as it is now. So we know that the 7 streams are still there. Atlantis had 7 streams. And we know that the Tower of Babel was cast down into the ocean. One part was left aloft, and a third part was burned to the ground. So there's the fire. Some investigators who have given much study to the antiquities, traditions, old books, and probable geological history of Mexico and Central America believe that the first civilization the world ever saw appeared in this part of ancient America or was immediately connected with it. They hold that the human race first rose to civilized life in America, which is geologically the oldest of the continents, and that ages ago, the portion of this continent on which the first civilizers appeared was sunk beneath the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, usually engulfing of this portion of land that is supposed to have been affected by some tremendous convulsion of nature. There is appeal to recollections of such a catastrophe said to have been preserved in the old books of Central America, also in those of Egypt, from which Solon received an account of the lost Atlantis. According to this hypothesis, the American continent formerly extended from Mexico, Central America, and New Granada far into the Atlantic Ocean toward Europe and Africa, covering all the space now occupied by the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico and the West India Islands, going far beyond them toward the east and northeast. This lost portion of the continent was the Atlantis, of which the old annals of Egypt told so much in the time of Solomon, as we learn from Plato, and it was the original seat of the first human civilization, which after the great cataclysm was renewed and perpetuated in the region where we now trace the mysterious remains of ancient cities. Ancient and Modern Britons, page 177. There was an island larger than Asia Minor and Libya combined. From this island, one could easily pass to the other islands, from these to the continent which lies around the interior sea. It says In the island of Atlantis reigned 3 kings with great and marvelous power. They had under their dominion the whole of Atlantis, several other islands, and some parts of the continent. At one time, their power was extended to Libya and into Europe as far as Tyrrhenia. This would have been along the Euphrates. Then, quote, afterward, in one day and one fatal night, there came mighty earthquakes and inundations, which engulfed the warlike people. Atlantis disappeared beneath the sea. This would have been along the Euphrates. Where was the city of Shinar? Where it was along the Euphrates. According to the Genesis 6 conspiracy, remember, through the valor of Nimrod, the new kingdoms of the Euphrates were united after the Babel dispersion. Ashtaroth and the Euphrates, serving other gods, was also tied to cities on the Euphrates. Uruk was known as Iana, or the house of An being the Most High Elohim, the God of heaven. That's what all the sons of Noah knew Yahweh as back then, as An. So Emiker, or Nimrod, claims to have brought Iana, Semiramis, down from the mountains to make his female consort, so introducing the fertility rites into the early post-flood world. So it appears began the ritual of the priestess representing the god and the beginning of temporal prostitution under the concept of a holy marriage. And so then they would birth Raphaim, a two-spirit chimera, half angel, half human species. This clearly is one of the historic events Paul referred to in Romans 1 and 21 through 23. And they knew Elohim and they glorified him not as Elohim, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened, professing themselves to be wise. They became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible Elohim into an image made like corruptible man. In fact, it appears that this act became identified with Nimrod and his sister wife, for he is later referred to as Baal, the Babylonian form of Baal, later identified with Marduk. Ayana, as the Shemitic Ishtar, biblically called Ashtaroth, the consort of Baal. Ayana is known later in Assyria and Babylonia as Ishtar, Astarte by the Assyrians, Ashtaroth to Israel, Isis to the Egyptians, Durga to the Dravidians, and Aphrodite to the Greeks. She is said to have been born from the moon and dropped into the river Euphrates. Nimrod's Semitic meaning is leopard, Nimer meaning the leopard, and Rod meaning to subdue, rendered as spotted in Hebrew. It is the Greeks, Hams, and Assyrians, an admixture because these 3 kings were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But the leopard is Nimrod, and the leopard is what the 4th beast is. Are there female angels? Yes, and they are tied to the west and Shinar. Shinar is east of America, Ham's land, but it is on the west side of the land of Shem. In Israel's Babylonian captivity, the prophet Zechariah is told the following, and then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, lift up now thy eyes and see what this is that goeth forth. And I said, what is it? And he said, this is an ephah that goeth forth. He said, moreover, this is the sight. Oh, behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, this is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came out 2 women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and heaven. And then I said to the angel that talked with me, whether do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, to build it an house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own place. So this is when the Babylon that takes Israel captive happens. But you see, it's always happening in the West, because the West is determined for destruction, to destroy and be destroyed. So we can tie this back into the Antichrist later. The Sumerian religious system was based on the order in heaven: Yahweh, Yahusha, the son of Yah, and the adversary devil. The sons of Noah called Yahweh God Most High, or An, or Anu. According to the Sumerians, An had 2 sons, Enlil, the king of gods, just like his father, and Enki, the lord of the earth, like Satan. Anu and Enlil sent the flood. So it's clear the fallen angels knew about the son, Yahusha, and so did Noah and his family. The symbol of Yahweh was the eagle, the most high God, as an image stolen by Satan and his servants, satanic kingdoms, to symbolize himself. But remember, Yah is still the righteous eagle, although he condemns the unrighteous one. Jeremiah 49:16. You live in the rocky cliffs high on top of the mountain, but even though you live as high up as an eagle, Yahweh will bring you down. Make the distinction. Nimrod, or one of the Nimrods, was called the Assyrian, also called Osiris, Mithra, Tamu, Apollo, son of Zeus. So Apollo is the same word for Abaddon. I'm tying Nimrod into the Antichrist here. And he was a giant, so he will stand taller than all the others. The Septuagint says Nimrod began to become a giant. Gigantus is the word for giant here, and it's distinguished from other words like in Gibborim in the Hebrew text. He was one third man, two thirds God. This is what these prostitution rituals did. It mixed the Nephilim gene with humans. And so it caused the lightning whitening of their skin and gigantus. Esau cut off Nimrod's head in the book of Jasher, and his head was wounded. This is not another tie-in to the Antichrist. What lies beneath the Euphrates? Well, listen carefully. Here's the first thing. Cities on brainchamber.com and the BBC both said in 2003, a team of German archaeologists uncovered what might be one of the most remarkable discoveries in modern history, the tomb of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Iraq, New Moon. George Fassbender, an archaeologist from Munich's Department of Historical Monuments, led the expedition. Among these structures was a mausoleum-like building located in the former riverbed of the Euphrates. This find mirrors the description in the epic, which says Gilgamesh was buried beneath the Euphrates in a tomb constructed after the river's waters receded. And so they found the body of Gilgamesh on the Euphrates. In this tomb of Nimrod was a perfectly preserved corpse, over 5,000 years old, they say. And so, do you see, this is him. And to the right, you see all these images of Jesus. 2 Thessalonians 1 and says, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. The plagiarized term Christ or Christ originates from the Kemetic term Christ or Karast. The Karas was the name of the sarcophagus or coffin that the Kemetu used as an immortal house. In Kemet, everyone acquired a Karas. The Karas was the bank vault to protect the body from deterioration and to represent the body's presence after death. We see the connection here between the preserved bodies in the Egyptian Hamitic or perhaps Nimrodic tombs. I am hypothesizing, due to cloning, that they will attempt to use some of the genetic material of Nimrod to resurrect this Antichrist, just like Yahuwah built the first Adam. He, Hasatan, will build the final Antichrist. Now, please be patient because I've been tying it into the Euphrates and I'm going to tie it into the four angels that come up out of the sea. According to Revelation 17 and 8, this is what describes the Antichrist. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, yet is. Verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Remember, I showed you the 7 mountains in North America. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7th, and go into perdition. So basically, this is some sort of a resurrected final beast that will appear because he is of the 7. He is of the 7. He was one of the 7 before, and he becomes the 8th. 2 Thessalonians 2:7. The mystery of lawlessness is already at work, but the one now restraining will do so until he is out of the way. Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horn 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Nimrod is a leopard. He was one of the 7 kings who may be the 8th. He was buried on the Euphrates, and they have his preserved corpse. And the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. We saw that Babylon of the captivity of Yasharel was the 4th beast that ruled the earth with 3 horns that became 1 horn and was unlike the others. However, it had its final version of the mystery of lawlessness that is already at work to come, that is the Frankenstein beast we see here before the Antichrist. He has been the secret left wing of Babylon ruling in the earth with America, but seemingly in opposition all at once. These are the 4 carpenters or master builders who scattered Israel and who will also be part of regathering her, though they'll seek to use her for their own aims. This Frankenstein will finally materialize unveiled in Babylon proper as part of the shift in the order of the earth that has 3 aspects to it. The first, World War III, and this begins the judgment of the Gentiles. The second, the sign of Yahusha in the clouds, unveiled. And the kingdom begins to happen when Yahuwah makes a sacrifice in the north country by bringing down Leviathan, Satan, liberty. And thirdly, the sons of Yah are unveiled when the whole beast comes to Babylon and Israel is released from Babylon. This is also how the restrainer is taken out of the way. And so the 4th beast will be fully manifest, and one of the heads of the beast will be wounded, America. Now this makes way for the final man of sin and beast to be revealed. The lamb with the horns that speaks like a dragon, and power is given to the image of the beast. But remember, this is after Yasharel leaves Babylon. In order to prove this, we must prove that the 4 angels unchained from the Euphrates are the same as the 4 kingdoms that destroyed, enslaved, and oppressed Israel. How can we confirm the 4 angels loosed from the Euphrates are the 4 kingdoms that ruled before and are now one? Let's take a look at Daniel. During the Babylonian Empire, Daniel fasts and prays for revelation on a vision given him. And the prince of Persia, the principality of the Persian Empire, withstands Gabriel from getting a message to Daniel. So only Michael stands with Gabriel to bind that prince. Daniel 10, Gabriel's message. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. Skipping down. On the 24th day of the 1st month, I was standing at the bank of the great river, the Tigris. I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, and his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. Skipping down. Then he continued, "Do not be afraid, Daniel, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before Yahuwah, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia." Skipping down to verse 20. So he said, "Do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. No one supports me against them except Michael, your prince." So remember, Enoch and Jubilees said the angels were bound by other angels. And Matthew 18:18 also says, "Verily I say unto you, whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." So I believe that Gabriel and Michael, would bind these principalities after each of their ruling. All three beast kingdoms were subdued under the horn of Rome. The fifth Frankenstein beast had all the other beasts submitted to the head of the lion/eagle, which is Britain in North America. But now their powers shall begin to divide again, and they'll war with each other and the Gentile saints. But the final Antichrist will unify them in his resurrection as the Lamb that speaks like a dragon. In Revelation 12, Israel is delivered from Babylon. After the woman is delivered and the dragon is cast down and wroth, he can no longer make war with her because Yasharel is hidden in the wilderness on the wings of a great eagle. So the dragon now goes to make war with the remnant of the saints. Yasharel was numbered as the 144 in Revelation 7. Then fire and brimstone falls. Yasharel escapes because Yahuwah has cast down the great Leviathan. In Revelation 9 comes Abaddon and the four beasts. And I saw a star fall from heaven and open the bottomless pit, and then loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates, is what happens next. So Israel is saved according to Enoch 51. And in those days shall the earth also give back that which has been entrusted to it, and Sheol also shall give back that which it has received, and hell shall give back that which it owes. The dry bones rise. The Revelation 13 beast that rises up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns. This was and is Babylon, America, and Britain, and all the nations conspiring against Israel. And America, like I said, is wounded unto death. This is the beast that makes war with the churches, with the remaining saints out in the world. Because who are these saints if Yasharel is already delivered? Now, in Revelation 13, what happens? And lo, I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, which had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. And he did all the first beast could do before him, and he caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the beast whose deadly wound was healed. So now Babylon is healed again. But why does this beast arise from the earth? Well, when Yahuwah judges Babylon in Jeremiah 46, this is what he says: "Let not the swift flee away, nor the mighty man escape. They shall stumble and fall toward the north again by the river Euphrates, the river Parath. And who is it that cometh up as a flood, whose waters are moved like the rivers? Egypt riseth up like a flood, and his waters are moved like the rivers. And he saith, I will go up and cover the earth. I will destroy the city of them that dwell therein." And skipping down to verse 46 and 10, because that was the dragon chasing Israel out of Babylon. But in verse 46 and 10, it says, "This is the day of Adonai Yahuwah Sabaoth, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge him on his adversaries, and the sword shall devour, and it shall be satiate and made drunk with their blood. For Adonai Yahuwah Sabaoth has a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates." So remember, the angels of punishment already took Israel and scourged and punished them and threw them into the valley of the Euphrates as dry bones. Israel was his sacrifice, and now he's come for his precious possession. So Yahuwah does a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. What does he sacrifice? Remember, Leviathan is smitten in the midst of the 7 streams. I believe this is the Statue of Liberty. Satan has no chain about his foot any longer as the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is Satan, if you don't know. The chain has been broken. And so Isaiah 27 has a prophecy against the kingdom of Satan. And of the joy for Yasharel and their deliverance. And Yahuwah will thresh Babylon from sea to shining sea. So again, we come back to this prophecy. In that day, Yahuwah, with his sore and great mighty swords, shall visit Leviathan, that piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent. He shall slay the dragon in the sea. But hereafter, Jacob shall take root, and Israel shall flourish and grow, and the world will be filled with fruit. Hath he smitten him as he smote those that smote him? Or is he slain according to the slaughter of them that were slain by him? In the measure, in the branches thereof, wilt thou contend with it? When he bloweth with his rough wind in the day of the east wind? By this, therefore, shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. And skipping to verse 12, and in that day shall Yahuwah thresh from the channel of the river unto the river of Egypt. And ye shall be gathered one by one, O children of Israel. And so Yahuwah will thresh from the channel of the river, and I believe this is the channel of the river of Euphrates, unto the river of Egypt. And in that day shall the great trumpet be blown, and they shall come which perished in the land of Assyria, and they that were chased into the land of Egypt, and they shall worship Yahuwah on the holy mount at Jerusalem. This I believe to be the opening of the Euphrates, all right, to the Mississippi. I don't think it's the channel where the statue of Satan is, the dragon sits, the Statue of Liberty, because he was liberated to reign over America, and that's why he is unchained. But I believe this is the dragon Satan now, who is cast down from heaven by Michael and the angel of Yahuwah. And he will be personified or perhaps incarnated into the Antichrist when Israel is out of the way. Then Satan will be given license to enslave the entire planet because they enslaved Israel. This is why the head of one of the beasts is mortally wounded. He literally dies. This is the death of Hasatan when he is cast down as Leviathan, but then he resurrects again. He's like the Terminator. He just keeps coming to kill and keeps resurrecting. So in the same channel, in the same area where the Statue of Liberty is this image of this awakening, this resurrection of this guy. And doesn't he look just like Nimrod? He looks just like, white Chisas, white Kaisi Us, right? So there he resurrects again. This Antichrist is resurrected after the dragon is cast down, after he wars with Israel as Abaddon. He is the judgment of the whole earth. And I believe this is the iron clone AI that will not mix with clay. And now remember, what was one of the names of Nimrod? Apollo. And he was wounded in the head. In fact, his head was chopped off. In Revelation, Apollyon or Abaddon is the god of destruction, Shiva. And this god of destruction is over these 4 spirits who give power to these 10 kings or bricks, who are the sum of all the kingdoms of Babylon. I believe in Revelation 13:7, this is when power is given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power is given to him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life. And so this is why we have all of this kind of stuff going on with Putin and everybody in the West taking down Damascus. They're all conspiring together. And the appearance of these flying saucers and alien ships, it's a conspiracy. When the true angel of Yahuwah comes with his warring angels, everyone will be in fear except for Yasharel will have peace. And then they will escape. The fallen have no place to go. Michael is casting them down, as I said several months ago. So please watch my video on the rise of the 144, because this is after, again, as I said, the 144 are numbered, and in and around the throwing down of brimstone and Satan being cast down as Leviathan into the sea. But another thing also happens at this time, a series of earthquakes that smite the seven streams. So we're not quite done with the Euphrates and the consequences that the Euphrates reaps beyond the four angels of the great river Euphrates. In Revelation 6:12, Revelation 8, and Revelation 11 and 13, there are great earthquakes. And I believe that these are the ones, as Isaiah 11 says, that smite the seven streams of the river of Egypt. And I believe as they do this, they are smiting the river Euphrates. Why? Because Revelation 16:12 through 16 says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be made. And so this is how Israel is coming back one by one. And this is also tied to both the Egyptian sea, the seven streams, of which one is the great river Euphrates. Aren't done yet because we have to show you exactly where the river Euphrates is and why it judges the whole earth. And there are two prophecies that speak of this, that is both sent to the 10 tribes and obviously given to Yasharel by both Baruch and Jeremiah. So Daniel is given this prophecy at the confluence of the river Euphrates and the river Hiddekel or Yangtze River. He is basically sitting between the Tigris and the Euphrates when Gabriel visits him. He knows the third or fourth beasts are on their way, and he sits at the location of their judgment that spreads to the four corners of the earth. The Euphrates runs all the way to the Pacific from the Atlantic and to Western Europe all the way to the Middle East. The Hiddekel runs all the way from the Middle East to the Pacific. We see this second witness for this fact that this judgment is made at the confluence of these two great rivers. The book of Judith 1 and 6 says, there came unto him all they that dwelt in the hill country, and all that dwelt by Parath, or the Euphrates, and Hiddekel, and Hydaspes in the plain of Arioch, the king of the Alameans. The very many nations of the sons of Helad assembled themselves to battle. So we can see that where the Hiddekel or Yangtze River meets with the Euphrates is where there has always been battles and judgments. This is literally a crossroads of the earth, although it's not Eden. It's the fertile intersection of the world, a crossroads where the Gentiles and all other nations were adopted into Israel. But there's much more on the river Euphrates that we have to unlock in terms of this judgment beyond the four beasts that come up out of it, because it relates to the judgment of the entire earth. As you've seen by my description, it literally kind of covers the whole earth. But I have to prove that to you still. There are two more things that lie beneath the Euphrates. And so let's look at one of them here. In the book of Jeremiah, at the time that Israel is moving towards the Babylonian captivity, this is what Yah says to Jeremiah. Cast away like a filthy garment this girdle into the river Euphrates. So what Yahuwah does is he asks Jeremiah to get a linen girdle, put it on his loins, and put it not in water. And so that's what he does. And then in verse 4 here, it says, take the girdle thou hast bought, which is upon thy loins, arise and go towards the Parah, the Euphrates, and hide it there in the cleft of the rock. So I went and hid it by Parath as the Yahuwah commanded me. And after many days, Yahuwah said unto me, Arise and go toward Parath, and take the girdle from thence, which I commanded thee to hide there. And I went and dug and took the girdle from the place where I hid it, and behold, the girdle was corrupt and was profitable for nothing. Then the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Thus saith Yahuwah, after this manner will I destroy the pride of Judah and the pride of Jerusalem. This wicked people have refused to hear my word and walk after the stubbornness of their own heart, and walk after other gods to serve them and to worship them. Therefore they shall be as this girdle, which is profitable for nothing. For as the girdle cleaveth to the loins of a man, so have I tied to me the whole house of Israel and the whole house of Judah, saith Yahuwah, that they might be my people, that they might have a name and praise and glory, but they would not hear. So a girdle is really defined as a waistcloth or a waistband. And it is literally, it means fruitfulness or belt of truth. It's Yahuwah's power on kings. And that's why when the Yehudi and Israel went to war, they would say, gird up your loins, because they would take their cloths around their waist and tie them up around their loins. And of course, we have Ephesians 6:14. It covers the whole armor of God. And so that is the intimacy that Israel had with Yahuwah. They were the covering for his most private parts. They were like his wife. And so this is cast into the river Euphrates and thrown under a rock. So this is the rock that has crushed Israel in the greater captivity. And this has to be reconciled. Now, there's also an example of Baruch casting something into the Euphrates. Baruch tells an eagle to take the book of prophecy to the tribes in the west. And Ezra, 2nd Ezra 13:43, shows us that what? I said this before. These tribes entered into the Parath by way of the narrow places of the river and crossed over. And so they crossed over into the west via the east. And so in Baruch 77:22 and 78:1, this is where the eagle is represented as Yahuwah. And what Baruch says to this eagle is, Go and tarry not in any place, nor enter a nest, nor settle upon any tree, till you have passed over the breadth of many waters of the river Parath, and have gone to the people that dwell there, and cast down to them this sefer. And so he reminds them that Yahuwah's judgment will come at the time of the consummation of the age through Yahuwah, the ruler, when he brings all things into judgment. And so he says, after that you have suffered, that if you obey those things which have been said unto you, you will receive from the Mighty One whatever has been laid up and reserved for you. But he warns them that if they continue in the way of the Gentiles, they will receive, and really the judgment of the Gentiles, because they will become Gentiles. I say this because this word of consolation, the keeping of the law, and the set time for the consummation and Yah's judgment on the Gentiles was sent across the Euphrates with an eagle. Mesopotamia.org says the following about the Euphrates and Tina rivers. Its flow has significantly altered by the construction of dams and irrigation projects, leading to the environmental and ecological challenges. Again, we see the usual recurring issues. Damming and redirecting waterways affected the rivers. The Nile flows from its sources in East Africa through Egypt and the Sudan before emptying into the Mediterranean Sea, away from the mouth of the Black Sea. Again, artificial structures stopping the flow, reducing the Nile volume by 95% at the Mediterranean. Russian Nikolai Alexandrovich Malyshev created the dam. The Aswan Dam spills off into two lakes, Nasser and Toshka, clearly redirected waterways. Satan deceiveth the whole world. The dam's pernicious downstream effects, in this case, a rising water table, damaged urban sewer systems, ancient monuments, and agricultural fields. A lack of rich sediment in the water drove high artificial fertilizer use and wiped out fish populations. Now imagine if we sucked North Africa back into Western Europe and narrowed the Mediterranean River that ran across east to west to the Ganges or Yangtze, and west to the Great Lakes of North America from the Atlantic Ocean. It gives an entirely new meaning to the explanation of the name, the Great River Euphrates. Notice how that has become Niagara Falls, or the Great Rivers and Lakes. Niagara, like the mare Negro, means Negro, as in like Niger River or River Euphrates, coming out of the land of the Negroes. And that's where the Negro sacrifice in the Euphrates fell, Negroes Falls. And that's where over 200 cities, Negro cities in America, were drowned. Here's the mare Negro. Britannica says the Black Sea became a large freshwater lake. Keep in mind, this was originally called Negro or Niagara. The present connection to the Mediterranean Sea turned it into salt water, but it is extremely low saline, being fed by northern streams like the Danube. A genetic site about rivers called aboutriver.com says the Nile once flowed into the Black or Negro Mare before the formation of the Mediterranean Sea. So you just have to look at heaven and earth as the witness as to the Euphrates, do you not? Niagara has an ancient cemetery of giants, according to Toronto's Daily Telegraph. And so pause to read all about the 200 Anakim skeletons along Cayuga Township, gigantic in stature. Euphrates actually means ewe, which is a female woman who delivers freight or a baby, all right? Delivers a son. So it's interesting that it's now called Euphrates. It refers to the Hebrews. That's what Ivrit means. It doesn't mean ivory. The Ivrit coast means Hebrew coast. So the waters of the Euphrates define the coast of the Hebrews, and most specifically, Abraham. It seems Babylon is almost always set up in the west, although it was at one point set up where so-called India is located on the border of the west. So you may have guessed it earlier, but obviously the Great River Euphrates extends all the way from the Black Sea, possibly through the Mediterranean, all the way into Niagara Falls. And previous to about 1600 or earlier, there were no Great Lakes in the area of North America, and these maps prove that. And so some kind of great conflagration destroyed the Great River Euphrates and broke it up into lakes. And don't you know, a whole bunch of Negro cities, tens of them or more, are underneath. So a judgment is going to issue forth and rise up out of those lakes. And it is the smiting of the seven streams that sit in the midst of the Atlantic that will make the way for the kings of the East. Let's look and see how Jeremiah seals up this prophecy. And so the seven streams are smitten by Yahuwah in Isaiah, and in Revelation 16:12 through 16, it says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water of was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Jeremiah 59. The word which Jeremiah the prophet commanded Sariah the son of Neriah the son of Mahasiah, when he went to Zedekiah the king of Judah into Babel in the 4th year of his reign, and Sariah was a peaceable prince. So Jeremiah wrote in a book all the evil that should come upon Babel, even all these things that are written against Babel. And Jeremiah said to Sariah, when thou comest unto Babel, and shalt see, and shalt read all these words, then shalt thou say, O Yahuwah, thou hast spoken against this place to destroy it, that none should remain in it, neither man nor beast, but it should be desolate forever. This is a double prophecy. And when thou hast made an end of reading this book, thou shalt fasten a stone to it, and cast it in the midst of the Euphrates, and shalt say, thus shall Babel be drowned, and shall not rise from the evil that I will bring upon her, and they shall be weary. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah. And so the stone is thrown upon the foot of the iron mixed with clay kingdom, and it is cast down. And it is cast down by the spoken word of the law that judges it. And so this judgment sent into the Euphrates is sent into the Pacific Northwest to judge it. And in fact, all the way around the world, because it'll also go through the Yangtzes and it'll go down the Mississippi River of Egypt also. And so that is the prophecy of the angels rising from the great river Euphrates and the judgment of Yah. Thank you so much for watching, Baruch family. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your donations. Please like, subscribe, and share, or go to intoalltruth.net to get our appointed times calendar so you can keep the appointed times at the right time.
Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.